I mentioned yesterday, Mary Kay, where, at the quarterback position, it's the most important in sports. We'll make a bet or acquire a player that we like if it's the right cost. With Talon specifically, very mature young man, really strong makeup, and he has rare physical gifts. He has size, he has elite speed, he has a big arm. He's going to need some polish with his game, but he has the work ethic and he has the acumen to do so. So we're looking forward to adding him to the roster and adding him to the mix in terms of competition.
Can let's talk about potentially.
Hey yo, Andrew Berry just cooked a 5-star meal with draft picks, and Kevin Stefanski over in Atlanta is sitting there with a burnt hot dog. Welcome back to Overtime Reports. I'm Dre Fiver, and today we are going all the way in on the most poetic storyline to come out of the entire 2026 NFL Draft weekend. Because while the Cleveland Browns were being praised from one coast to the other, their old head coach, the man they showed the door after years of mediocrity, was sitting in Atlanta getting absolutely roasted by every major publication in football. You truly cannot write this kind of drama, except I'm about to write it for you chapter by chapter, so buckle up. Let's set the scene. The 2026 NFL Draft just wrapped. 32 teams made their moves, and the consensus from analysts, media outlets, and draft experts is already taking shape. And the two organizations sitting at opposite ends of that conversation, the Cleveland Browns and the Atlanta Falcons. One of those franchises is celebrating, the other one is in damage control mode. And the crazy part, those two organizations share a very specific man in their recent history, a man named Kevin Stefanski, who went from running the Browns sideline to running the Falcons sideline and apparently brought his bad luck right along with him. Let me start in Cleveland because that's where the confetti is flying. Andrew Berry, the general manager who's been taking shots and catching strays for years, ever since the Deshaun Watson disaster had everyone questioning his judgment, just put together what might be back-to-back home run draft classic.
It's happening already, y'all. Kevin Stefanski showing his true colors as GM of the Browns. Andrew Berry receiving flying colors around the league for the draft that he pulled off, bringing in a bunch of talented players. It is the tail opposite for Kevin Stefanski and what he's done with the Atlanta Falcons already, as he is getting absolutely blasted by Mel Kiper, NFL Network, and a bunch of other publications for what they are considering a bad draft.
And this time, the national media isn't whispering about it. They are screaming it from the rooftops. According to ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr., Berry and the Browns received an A grade for their 2026 NFL draft class, one of only 4 teams in the entire league to earn that distinction from Kiper. 4 teams out of 32, and Cleveland is in that group. Kiper specifically praised the Browns for addressing their 2 biggest weaknesses in the first round, offensive tackle and wide receiver, and noted they doubled down on both positions on day 2 as well. That's not just good scouting, that's surgical. That's a front office that knows exactly what it's doing and went out and did it. Evidence. https://youtube.b/0RLOLTIM 9vs ? Psi equals YNL Lizzle HEDJIC. Exact timestamps pulled from the Browns segment, typically 0:59-2:30 depending on the full segment length. Now let's talk about the specific moves, because the details here are everything. The Browns started by trading back a few spots with the Kansas City Chiefs and still landed Utah offensive tackle Spencer Fano at number 9 overall, a player Berry had apparently targeted all along. And by trading back, Cleveland picked up additional draft capital in the process. That is the definition of winning twice on the same play. You get your guy and you walk away with more picks. That's front office excellence, and I don't want to hear another word about Andrew Berry being on the hot seat ever again. After securing Fano on the line, Berry pivoted immediately to the receiver room, and this is where it gets good for Shedeur Sanders fans. Cleveland selected Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M at number 24 overall, then turned right around and grabbed Denzel Boston out of Washington at number 39 in the second round. 2 receivers in the top 40 picks. Dre's personal opinion, that is your GM going on record and saying, I believe in our quarterback and I am going to put weapons around him. No more excuses, no more Shedeur trying to manufacture something out of nothing with a thin receiving core. The cavalry has arrived. According to ESPN, Concepcion averaged over 15 yards per catch last season and found the end zone 25 times in his college career, while Boston brings a 6'4" frame that gives Cleveland a legitimate contested catch and red zone threat they simply have not had at the position in years. And Berry wasn't done being aggressive. After going back-to-back at receiver, Cleveland moved back UP in the second round, trading up to the 58 overall pick specifically to secure Emmanuel McNeil Warren, a safety out of Toledo. Now, here's why that matters. According to Mel Kiper, McNeil Warren was his 25th ranked overall prospect in the entire draft. The Browns got him at pick 58. That is what analysts call pure undeniable. 10 forced fumbles and 5 interceptions in college. He flies to the football. Berry saw him starting to slide and refused to let that happen. He went and got his guy. That's a front office that is locked in. Now let's talk about the numbers, because the analytics back this up beyond just the eye test. A statistical breakdown of draft value showed the Browns came away with a plus 33 score compared to where players landed on the consensus big board across the first 3 rounds, ranking them 6th in the entire NFL in value gained. On average, Cleveland drafted players who should have been selected 4 picks earlier than where they actually got them. That means Berry wasn't reaching. He was extracting. He was pulling value out of this draft that other teams left on the table. And that is what separates good general managers from great ones. According to the analyst community, the Browns made 4 of their first 60 picks in the top 60 overall selections, addressing the offensive line, receiver room, and safety position in a way that had media from coast to coast reaching for the highest possible grades. PFF gave the Browns an A+, NFL Network gave them strong marks, and perhaps most meaningfully, Keeper, who gave them an A+ a year ago for a class that produced the Defensive Rookie of the Year in Carson Schlesinger and key offensive contributors in Quinshon Judkins and Harold Fanning Jr., came back and gave them an A again, back to back. That is not an accident. That is a front office that has figured something out. Now, let's talk about Atlanta, because this is where the story gets genuinely cinematic. While all of that was happening in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski, the man who spent years in Cleveland not getting this done, was in Atlanta presiding over what NFL Network called the worst draft in the entire league. And I need you to understand what that actually means. Chad Reuter over at NFL Network gave the Atlanta Falcons a B-. Now I know what you're thinking. Dre, a B- doesn't sound that bad. Let me explain why it is catastrophic in context. According to Sports Illustrated's breakdown of the grades, no other team in the entire NFL received a grade below a B from NFL Network. Not one. So that B- didn't just mean the Falcons had a mediocre draft. It meant NFL Network looked at all 32 teams and said Atlanta had the single worst draft class of 2026. Dead last, Kevin Stefanski. Dead last. And then Mel Kiper piled on and made it worse. Keeper gave Atlanta a C+. Now, Keeper is admittedly a tough grader, but even accounting for that, a C+ for a head coach who just arrived in a new city and is supposed to be rebuilding a franchise, that stings. Keeper's reasoning was pointed and direct. He wrote that Atlanta didn't take an offensive tackle until the 7th round. The 7th round, he noted that linebacker Harold Perkins Jr., a player with elite athleticism, is someone whose actual position in the NFL is still genuinely unclear, and called it Stefanski's problem to figure out. And he hammered the overall lack of selections, noting that without a first-round pick, the Falcons just didn't have enough ammunition to build a truly impactful class. Now, to be fair, and Dre is always going to be fair, the reason Atlanta didn't have that first-round pick wasn't Stefanski's fault. That pick was traded away by the previous regime to acquire edge rusher James Pierce Jr. So Stefanski walked into the situation already behind the 8 ball. And to their credit, the Falcons did some things right. Cornerback Avion Terrell in the 2nd round was widely praised, a first-round talent who fell to them at 48 and who gets to play alongside his older brother AJ Terrell in the Atlanta secondary. That's a feel-good story and a football win. Wide receiver Zachariah Branch out of Georgia was also applauded as quality value in the 3rd round. But here is where I have to keep it 100 with you, because that's what Overtime Reports is built on. The good picks on day 2 don't erase the grade. The analysts weren't grading Stefanski on a curve just because he inherited somebody else's mess. And that double standard cuts both ways, because when the Browns were struggling, nobody was grading Berry on a curve for the Watson situation either. The league doesn't hand out participation trophies. You either win the draft weekend or you don't. And according to virtually every major analytical voice in football, Cleveland won and Atlanta lost. Simple as that. And here's the part that makes this storyline so deeply satisfying for Browns fans specifically. You remember what people were saying about Cleveland 6 months ago? They were questioning whether Shedeur Sanders was the right pick. They were questioning whether Berry should keep his job. They were questioning whether the organization could ever get out of its own way. And now, the same analysts who spent years clowning on Cleveland are the ones handing out A grades and calling this a potential home run class for the second year in a row. The same Mel Kiper who ripped the Browns for years is sitting there writing that this could be one of the best draft hauls in the AFC. You can't make this up. Dre's personal take, Andrew Berry deserves his flowers right now, and I'm not waiting until the season starts to give them 2 consecutive drafts, graded among the best in the league, a defensive rookie of the year already on the roster from last year's class, an offensive line being rebuilt from the ground up, 2 new weapons coming in for Shedeur Sanders at the receiver position, a slot buster in Concepcion and a big-bodied X in Boston. A safety who most analysts thought was a first-round player sitting on the back end. The Browns are building something real, and the man running the operation is doing it right. Meanwhile, Kevin Stefanski is going to have to answer questions all offseason about a C+ from Mel Kiper, a B- from NFL Network, and the uncomfortable reality that the franchise he left behind just had arguably one of the best draft weekends in the entire NFL. That's a heavy weight to carry into your first full year in a new city. And look, I don't wish bad things on Kevin Stefanski as a person, but as a football analyst sitting in this chair, I have to tell you what the data says. What the grades say, what the national media consensus says. And right now, all of it says the same thing. The man Cleveland replaced him with just outdrafted him by a mile. The Browns went into this draft with a clear plan. They identified their biggest needs, offensive line and wide receiver, and they attacked those needs from the jump and never stopped. They traded back when it made sense, grabbed their guy anyway, accumulated extra picks for 2027, and came out the other side with 10 selections and a class that has the entire league talking. That's not luck. That's not a fluke. That's a competent front office operating at a high level in back-to-back years. And for a franchise that has historically found ways to stumble over itself at every turn, that means everything. So, to every doubter, every person who said Berry was done, every voice that spent the last year telling Browns fans this rebuild was going nowhere, I hope you're watching. I hope you're seeing what's happening in Cleveland. Because while y'all were counting the Browns out, Andrew Berry was sitting in that draft room building something piece by piece, pick by pick, and the rest of the NFL is starting to take notice whether they want to or not. That's the story of the 2026 NFL draft for these 2 franchises. One organization moved forward, one organization moved sideways, and the man who connects them, Kevin Stefanski, is now the cautionary tale instead of the comeback story. Life comes at you fast in this league. If you made it to the end of this video, I already know you're built different. Go ahead and smash that like button right now. If this breakdown had you locked in, that's how you let me know. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Andrew Berry has officially silenced his critics? Or does he still have something to prove when the season kicks off? And if you are not subscribed to Overtime Reports yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you never miss a breakdown. Dre Fiver is in this chair every single time something big breaks in the NFL. And trust me, this Brown story is just getting started. We'll see you next time.